The first real threat of the 2019 hurricane season, Hurricane Dorian takes aim at the northern Bahamas. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jerome Sawyer, and welcome to a special edition of On the Record, Tracking Dorian. At this hour, Dorian is now a Category 1 hurricane, growing in strength and size in the Atlantic Ocean. From a tropical storm to a hurricane, Dorian has been growing in size and strength over the past few days. The open waters have proven to be very favorable for the growth and development of this storm. As the fifth named storm of the season, this could be the fourth storm in our waters in the last 5 years. Some areas of concern tonight in the north. Sandy Point, Abaco, a low-lying community prone to flooding. Marsh Harbor, Abaco, with a large Haitian immigrant community in the Pigeon Pea and the Mud. Over in Grand Bahama, Sweetings Key and East End, very small and low-lying communities. Heading west, there is the Fishing Hole Road, which floods and cuts off access to the 8 Mile Rock and West End community. Also, West End, another area in Grand Bahama, which has a history of flooding. A lot of critical areas in NEMA's sites tonight. We are dedicating this entire show to tracking Hurricane Dorian, specifically for those of you in the northern Bahamas. I'm joined on the broadcast by Mary Butler. She's a meteorologist with the Department of Meteorology. Mary, what can you tell us tonight? Where is the storm and what should we be concerned about at this hour?
Okay, the beginning of the 2019 Atlantic hurricane season started off a bit sluggish. As you may or may not know, we are at the peak of the season. It peaks in August, and we're only at the fifth named storm, two of which are actively in the Atlantic. That's Erin and Dorian. And tonight, we'll be focusing on Dorian. As of 5 p.m., the center of Dorian was located near latitude 22.5 degrees north and longitude 67.7 degrees west, or about 232 miles east-northeast of the Turks and Caicos Islands, 397 miles east-northeast of Matthew Town in Nagua, and 648 miles east-southeast of New Providence. Now, Dorian, as you can see, we have here the models are showing the track from the beginning of the week, from last week into the beginning of this week and so forth. It's showing that after Dorian passed over Puerto Rico, the turn was more to the east, taking it further out and along the eastern periphery of the island chains. However, at the end of the week, as you can see, we expect a turn toward the west, that west-northwest turn, which would mean that would put the islands of the extreme northwest Bahamas under a warning.
Okay, so we're at a Category 1. It is now Thursday night. What can we expect, particularly the folks in the northern Bahamas? We're talking about Abaco, Grand Bahama. What can they expect over the next few days?
Okay, the models have it to develop into a Category 3 hurricane, which is a major hurricane, and also from the cone of uncertainty has the eye of the storm moving near or over the islands of Abaco, a part of Naughty Luthra, Grand Bahama, Bimini, and the Berry Islands. Now, we've been having a lot of rainfall from an upper level trough, and it continues to persist. The rainfall chance in the storm for the central Bahamas has it as 1 to 3 inches for the central Bahamas, with in isolated cases 4 inches. But however, when it makes its way into the extreme northwest Bahamas and intensify, we're looking at rainfall of about 4 to 6 inches with isolated case of 8 inches of rain. We at this point in time do not need any more rainfall to create a flood, but flooding would be absolute, especially for those islands.
I want to talk too now about the winds. We talk about rain, so we're looking about a worst case scenario about, we got 8 inches of rain. What are we looking at now in terms of what could happen with the winds?
Okay, winds, with a Cat 3, we are looking at winds in excess, which is a major hurricane, and that is noted by the letter M. At this point in time, we're looking at winds in excess of 110 miles per hour. So that wind, which is the most destructive features for us whenever we encounter a hurricane. But we would have two two factors here for the northern, the extreme northwest Bahamas. We would have wind as well as water.
Wow. And now we're looking at, and I just want to say, folks, that this is the forecast.
That's right.
Days ago, it was we were looking at the southern Bahamas,
That's
and at one point we seemed to be
shift.
all clear. I mean, you go to bed, you wake
Right.
up, the storm changes.
Exactly.
So all of this can change.
Oh, most definitely.
But what I want to talk about is what side of the storm we are on, and what makes it even more dangerous for us.
Okay, we the strongest side of the storm would be the front right quadrant, and as you can see, we are on the left. So.
Okay.
It doesn't diminish the effects of the storm.
Right.
However, what it would do is the full brunt of it, the islands would not experience.
So that is the one bit of good news.
Yes.
Well, okay. Also, too, I want to talk about particularly the areas I mentioned at the top of the show, those low-lying areas. We're talking about, you know, Sweetings Key and East End and Grand Bahama. You've got West End over in Abaco, Sandy Point. It's small community, but low-lying, prone to flooding. Also, concerned tonight about the pigeon peas and mud. A immigrant population in those areas also prone to flooding. What potentially could happen in those areas?
Okay, like I said, the two main factors that are of concern for those persons in that area, water, which is in the form of rainfall, and also the wind. Now, the residents, they should at first examine whether their occupancy is storm worthy. If it's not storm worthy, or if you feel, as it stands now with all of this rain, that it's difficult you getting out of your house now, well, it's going to be worse when the storm comes. So the decision you make now, you would have to make, is to move.
Now, in the case of a marsh harbor where the pigeon pea and the mud, that's inland. But when you talk about Sandy Point, that's a coastal community. East End, Sweetings Key, West End, those are all coastal communities. The thing we have not discussed is storm surge.
And swells as well. And they will continue days after the storm has passed. But the swells, yes, they are the most destructive in some cases as well. And like I said, you examine the worthiness of your occupancy, your residence, and those residents there would have weathered several storms, and they've had several experiences with storms. So if you feel your occupancy is not storm worthy, now you need to make a plan to move or to be somewhere until the storm has passed.
This is, this is, of course, the time when we really need to pay attention, in terms of what could happen. People, particularly in New Providence, are asking what's going to happen. You mentioned Bimini, you mentioned North Eleuthera.
That's right.
They can feel conditions as well. But I mean, experience tells us that a very large storm can affect the entire Bahamas. With those of us, of course, in the northern and even central, we're concerned tonight as to what can happen. So let's talk for a minute about North Eleuthera, Bimini, New Providence, even the other islands in the central Bahamas, what they could experience.
Well, let's take a look of the wind chart and see what the wind chart has for us. That will give us a better indication of what is there to experience, because I talked about the rainfall potential, and the rainfall potential I said for the central 1 to 3, isolated case 4 inches.
Yeah. So what does all this mean for us?
This here is the wind field. The deepest red is showing the area where the hurricane force winds are.
This is hurricane strength.
This is hurricanes in the inner
sure.
In the
so
inner
what,
region
what
of
are
the
these
con.
now on the outside,
and
the lighter colors?
Are giving you indication of diminishing winds as you move further out. So out here, this would be your lightest winds, probably winds about 40 knots.
And that's
gusting
New
up to 40
Providence,
knots.
Andros. Right, okay, and others. We're going to talk a little bit more as the night goes along. Mary, thank you very much. Don't go anywhere. You're going to join us for the broadcast. Folks, we are just getting started tonight. We've got a lot to talk about. When we come back, we're going to be joined by some experts in hurricane preparedness. You're watching On the Record. We're back right after this. The first real threat of the hurricane season is upon us. The latest predictions have placed the northern Bahamas, Grand Bahama and Abaco specifically, in the hurricane cone. Other islands in the northwest Bahamas and in the central Bahamas also can feel the effects from tropical storm conditions as well as hurricane conditions. Joining me, the Director General of the Red Cross, Caroline Turnquest, as well as meteorologist Mary Butler, also joining us again for this segment. Caroline, welcome back to On the Record.
Thank you.
I didn't think I'd see you so quickly again after we did this a few months ago to start the hurricane season.
We did.
It was an important show. I'm happy we did it. But here we are tonight facing potentially another dangerous storm.
Once again.
What tonight does this mean for the Red Cross? You all prepare for times like this. What's happening with the Red Cross headquarters and even around the country?
Well, you know, Jerome, they say you have to plan, prepare, and then pray. So we're in the preparing stage. We would have a plan, you know, getting together as a disaster team. Currently, we are preparing. We are networking with all of our group leaders on the ground, and just making sure that they're okay. First of all, that they themselves, the homes, are ready and you know, set by example, and then moving it outward to the communities. So all day I spent speaking with individuals that are in Abaco and Bimini and Grand Bahama, testing of the radios, etc. So we have busy been preparing, but I'll tell you one thing. This is the first time in my tenure that we are sort of challenged with the perishable items.
Really?
To be prepared.
Well, this is the time to talk about it.
Yes, we have lots of non-perishables. You know, if we want to send blankets and tarp, etc., that's fine. But right now, people, if they were to come to us in terms of for food parcels, we sort of down on our
Well,
numbers
folks,
with
if you're
that.
watching tonight, the Red Cross needs your help. You need perishables. People
Yes.
can come and drop them off.
Canned goods, etc. Especially, we can collect for those they were expecting to be hit the islands, but who knows? It may turn around and come this way. So let's be vigilant and prepare ourselves, and do not take the storm lightly.
You answered my second question: is how prepared are you? I'm glad you mentioned that you need help, and that's important. That's what we're here for tonight, Mary. I mean, when I woke up yesterday, I think more so this morning, and I looked at the track and I saw Grand Bahama, I saw Abaco, my heart sank.
Why is that?
I thought, not again.
Yeah,
Not again.
we really don't need, I don't think in any case you would need any storms, seeing that we are such a flat topography. We can't really withstand much in rainfall nor wind when it comes to hurricanes. But I would like to mention, because I've made mention to sections of the Bahamas, that's northwest, central, and southeast. Now, your viewers, Jerome, may not be familiar with the islands that include
Sometimes we
these.
forget our geography.
Well,
Yes, this is a good time to. So when we talk, let's talk northwest. So which islands are not northwest?
That's Grand Bahama, Abaco and its keys, Bimini, Berry Island, and just we're talking about North Andros and New Providence and Eleuthera and their waters.
Okay.
The Central Bahamas will constitute Exuma and its keys, Long Island, Rum Key, San Salvador, and Cat Island. And lastly, the Southeast Bahamas, Crooked Island, Aucklands, Long Key, Maguana, Inagua, and Ragged Island. Now, I'd also like to mention that at this point for the Bahamas, we should have developed a culture of preparedness. We have to have. We are in Hurricane Alley. So our expectation each year is to experience at least one or two hurricanes. So we should stay in the mode of readiness, meaning you should have your debris, any derelict items that may become parasols during a storm removed constantly, and also check your flashlights, your battery-operated utensils to ensure that they're working and operating at this time.
I've got to ask you too, though. This is now a Category 1. You're talking, as we did at the top of the show, you're talking several days out, so possibly by the weekend. I'm always concerned, having done this so long and knowing the unpredictability of a storm. 2 days ago, it was a tropical storm, and we thought maybe some wind and rain in the south.
Associated.
Tonight we're in a Category 1.
It's a hurricane.
I'm seeing a lot. I've been watching the forecasters, particularly in the United States, and there is still a lot of uncertainty and
That's right.
ambiguity
Ambiguity
about
associated.
where this storm will go and what it will do. Does that make it potentially that more dangerous and scary
Yes, it
for
does.
us?
Yes, it does. And I'm going to tell you where the uncertainty lies. You, at the beginning of the show, you mentioned that the conditions that the storm are moving into favorable conditions. Yes. Also, it's unfavorable, meaning that the storm is moving into an area of dry air. Dry air, entrenchment to a storm weakens it, and it weakens the rainfall potential significantly. So we have the storm moving into a, in quote, favorable condition, but we have unfavorable conditions out there as well. But as you can see, and they're still riding on its development, that would definitely, the favorable condition, which is the warm water, which continues, and the light wind shearing, which are winds in the upper level opposing the direction of the winds associated with the storm, that's at a minimum. So obviously, the favorable condition wins out. It's winning out, and they have forecasted to win over the unfavorable condition and develop into a Category 3 hurricane by the end of the week.
Caroline, you've been through quite a few storms. You mentioned this is your 10th year in that position, but certainly not your first time dealing with hurricanes. What do you think, for the most part, have we gotten to the point as a people that we've stopped letting our guard down? Years ago, you thought, it may come. The forecaster said it may or may not come. We sort of went about business as usual. I don't get that sense anymore.
I think persons, remember Matthew?
Yes.
I think that taught some persons a lesson.
Particularly those of us in New
not
Providence.
us
Yes.
superb
Yes.
forecasting, is
And
it?
so it probably was, right?
Uh-huh.
But to say this, we always look at the family islands. Walking, especially when walking happened, those family islands took a licking.
Yeah, Long Island.
But
yeah,
so
actually,
we were
yeah.
like, when Matthew just relaxed. However, was that not a great lesson, especially those that live
definitely.
they want to live on the seashore, on the coastline. And so persons have to be very, very careful not to let their guards down. It's critical. Always. Some persons complain, oh, I bought a lot of groceries and I didn't use them. You can always use the groceries, So
Bring them to the Red Cross.
thank you,
You
thank
don't
you very
want
much
them,
for
yes.
that plug.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure, because if you need to have a family plan to start with,
Most definitely.
right? And you need to have a potential place to go in the event your area is flooded. So persons taking it lightly, and some people just go through partying and everything and let their guard down, as you said. But this is not the time to do it. Don't say, well, oh, that's going up to Abaco, we can be fine here. My dear, no. Be on guard.
Bring me
Prepare.
to my next question. Over the next day or two, Mary, this is going to be very critical for us.
Yes, and we'll be focusing our attention again, like I said, on the extreme northwest Bahamas. And we're hoping that the message, like she said, they're more attentive, they're more vigilant. She understands that. So we're hoping that the residents of those areas that will come under the storm in a matter of days, that they take heed to the word, take heed to the alert, take heed to the advice that has been given to them, and take action. The final thing is to take action. Don't just do nothing, and expect it's nice to pray. That's good. It's
No, that's
good to
important.
pray.
And sometimes, that's important to pray, but that cannot be the only thing that you do.
No, and you really have to take action. And I'm concerned for those ones, especially the areas you name that are prone to flood. It doesn't take much water to get them under. These persons, they should be seriously thinking of riding the storm somewhere else.
We've got to take another break, but the other thing when we come back, I do want to begin talking about the possibility of evacuations, because even at this hour, I know that members of NEMA are at the Prime Minister's office. We were supposed to have a representative from NEMA on the show. He was called to the Prime Minister's office. It's the second meeting for the day. So I know that they are considering evacuations. I do want to talk about evacuations, and I do want to talk about shelters, because you know the truth of the matter is everybody does not have a place to go. So folks, we are in the midst of tracking Dorian tonight. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more right after this. We are tracking Dorian tonight on the record. In the last 5 years, the country has suffered $820 million in losses and damage from hurricanes. That number could climb pending the outcome of this weekend. Joining me, the Director General of the Red Cross, Caroline Turnquest, as well as meteorologist Mary Butler. Now to evacuations. These are low-lying areas in some of the islands that we have talked about. Some, I call them hot spots, but some areas of real concern. I predict, and I've heard from my sources, that there could be some mandatory evacuations. People are resistant to move. Mary, I'm starting with you. Why is that such a bad and dangerous thing to do?
Because it's bad and dangerous because these persons, they would force the emergency persons to have to go and get them, which will be putting their lives at risk. And I'm sure you wouldn't want to be responsible for somebody else's death, and we don't want to put that pressure on our emergency system. So my advice to you is you listen. If your occupancy is not storm worthy, you're flooding already, please seek a shelter or seek that relative that's on higher ground so you can wait out the storm with them.
You've got people, when you talk about the Abacos, you've got the surrounding keys. Even, you know, Grand Bahama, I would have mentioned over and over, Sweetings Key. Oh, yes. These areas are not accessible by roads. If you've got to move, you've got to move now.
That's right. And like I said, we're advising you're aware of the threat. You're aware now, if not before, that you're in the cone of those islands are in the cone of uncertainty, which means that the eye may come over or near those islands of the Northwest Bahamas that I mentioned. So you should start your plans, activating your plans now.
And you mentioned North Eleuthera. I mean, you've got the Glass Window Bridge area, which
that's right.
Which you know that's a constant issue because of the topography and how that's laid out.
That's right.
And people in those areas have to consider as well what they will do.
And that would be exacerbated by the hurricane. So again, I repeat, activate your plans now to find somewhere other than your occupancy because it's not storm worthy to ride out the storm?
On Wednesday, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, held a news conference to alert the public about the approaching storm. During that news conference, the question of the functionality and number of Doppler radars and their ability to track these storms was raised. Senior Deputy Director of the Department of Meteorology, Jeffrey Simmons, responded in this way.
The case we're talking about was 2015 with Hurricane Joaquin. At that time, the Department of Meteorology was in possession of one Doppler weather radar, which was operational at the time. However, a radar only have the ability to see so far due to the curvature of the Earth. A radar can only see about 250 miles out. Hurricane Joaquin never came within 250 miles of New Providence where the radar was situated. That is the reason why Hurricane Joaquin was never seen on our radar. Nevertheless, we knew it was there, and we did what we had to do and to send out the warnings that was necessary. Since 2015, the Bahamas Department of Meteorology have entered an agreement to purchase and install 4 new Doppler weather radar throughout the Bahamas, and also to refurbish that old radar that was in 2015 and put that in place. That radar is to be placed in Ragged Island. Since then, we have put in place a new Doppler weather radar at New Providence, a new Doppler weather radar in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, a new Doppler weather radar in Millers, Long Island. Plans are to, by early next year, to place another new Doppler weather radar in Maguana and the refurbished weather radar in Ragged Island. With those 5 radars in place, then we would have total radar coverage for the Bahamas, so that any system that would enter into the Bahamas and its adjacent waters would be seen by us as it approaches and passes through the Bahamas.
Jeffrey Simmons there speaking to the Doppler radar system and where it is versus where it was a few years ago. You mentioned Hurricane Joaquin. One of the things I wanted to touch on before you go is the issue of shelters. Evacuations could be mandatory. Some people may just think that, you know, as Mary has said, your home or your shelter may just not be worthy and you want to move or you've been ordered to go. What's the state of our shelters? What should people do if they have to move or if they want to move?
Well, every year the Department of Social Services has a team that goes out and inspects shelters, and from that exercise they make a list of shelters which should be on all the community channels, on the NEMO Facebook page as well as the Bahamas Red Cross. So if persons want to move, all they do is contact their social services representative on the family violence or here in New Providence and go and register. The first thing to do is register.
So the first thing to do is register?
You need to register and let them know so that they can have a head count and best prepare for those
it's good the advice is not to just show up.
Yes.
So go and register. If you think you may need to move or want to move,
yes.
Now is the time
yes.
to go and register. And also to, you know, the storm's coming, you're nervous, you need to go, you're rushing. Now is the time for you to think about what do I take to the shelter?
Yes.
And what are some of the key things that people should put aside?
Personal items, especially, first of all, the shelter will not feed you, so you take your food. Your food items.
That's important.
Pets are not allowed
so you
in
there.
Your pet. So you need your clothing, you need your hygiene items, etc. And most of all, pay attention to what the shelter manager is saying, because there will be rules in there.
So you don't come there to run your own show?
No, there will be rules. So you make sure you have your blankets, your pillows, change of clothing, your hygiene items, etc. Things that you would take with you if you were going to a friend's house.
Okay, and then one thing too, like we mentioned, your important documents.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's important.
They should have been secured.
So now is the time, if you think you gotta move, want to move, maybe pack a bag.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do like me, I also have to have a bag packed.
Always, smart lady. Ladies, I want to tell you, I'm sorry we're out of time. In this segment, we've got more to discuss with some other guests. Mary, thank you very much for providing us some great information. Good to have you on the show. We're going to have you back.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. I always tell people Basil Dean ain't the only meteorologist in the Bahamas. We got some more folks out there. Glad to have you on. Caroline, as always, Thank you for coming. Great information. We'll be in contact with you. We have lots to talk about in the coming days.
Yes.
Best of luck to you. We're proud of the work you're doing. Thank you very much. Keep it up. Folks, we are live tonight on the record tracking Dorian from our TV studios. Stay with us. The broadcast continues right after this. Hurricane Dorian is now threatening the northwest Bahamas. Residents in Abaco and Grand Bahama specifically have some difficult times ahead of them should this storm hold its course. Tonight on the record, we are tracking Dorian. Joining me is Judy Terrell, Director of Communications with the Public Hospitals Authority. I'm so excited she's here, I'm nervous. And Michael Pratt, he's President of the Contractors Association. Welcome to On the Record. Now, if you know anything about broadcasting in the Bahamas, you know Judy Terrell and I have a long-standing relationship from our days at ZNS, the Broadcasting Corporation. Good to have you on the show.
It's great
You're in
to
another
be here.
role tonight.
Yes.
Mr. Pratt, I apologize for our love fest, but welcome to On the Record. Judy, I'm going to start with you. This is a difficult time for the country as we are faced with another storm. From the PHA perspective, what plans are in place to deal with this pending storm?
Well, I'm happy to be here tonight. First of all, Jerome, thank you so much for inviting me to be on and to really share what we're doing at the PHA. Of course, there's our plans go into effect for the storm season in March of every year.
Okay.
So we're out of the gate very quickly. Of course, the physical preparation of our institutions is really what we pay a lot of attention to. So getting buildings squared away, making sure that roofs don't leak, making sure that drains are cleaned. These are some of the things we do. Generators, of course, have to be looked at and assessed and topped up. We have to make sure that water storage tanks are checked for leaks and stability. And of course, they have to be topped up as well because we have some very important clients that we have to serve
sure, yes.
during these types of storms. So the physical preparation is happening at the hospitals and at our institutions, as well as we have to ensure that drug supplies are adequate. So what happens in a storm is that while typically annually we budget out for a certain amount of pharmaceuticals and surgical supplies to be disseminated across our institutions and clinics, we also ensure that there's a second supply that goes out, and that supply really is our storm supply. So those are the things we use to mitigate against having any issues during a storm. There is, of course, the pre-hurricane team, there is the during the storm team, and then there's the after the storm team. And so that is pretty much how we approach preparations for a storm.
I want to talk specifically, though, about, people think PMH, and that's the hub of where we think of a lot of activity. But when you look at, communities, you've got Grand Bahama, you've got Abaco.
Yes.
What happens in those areas? Do your tentacles reach into every aspect of providing healthcare, particularly on those family islands and those communities?
Well, off the record, we'd like to think of ourselves as being one single entity in healthcare. But PHA, of course, is an institution, as an organization, or rather an authority that really manages the Princess Margaret Hospital, the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, the Rand Memorial Hospital, and Grand Bahama Health Services, really. And so that covers the clinics in Grand Bahama. It also covers the family medicine clinic here in New Providence. Those are really the health facilities that are in our charge. However, this is healthcare, and there is really no line when you think about who we serve. And so when in a situation like a Dorian, where you know that Abaco will be impacted, where we don't really manage a clinic on Abaco, this will not preclude us from not being involved in ensuring that Abaco is taken care of. In fact, our supplies management agency would have ensured that Abaco had the adequate resources in terms of drug supplies and other supplies to have during this storm.
Okay.
So the tentacles, they're there.
They're there.
They
Okay.
may not officially be titled
Right.
there under a PHA organization.
But you make sure that they're taken
But we're
care
involved,
of. Mr. Pratt,
absolutely.
I've got to get you in now. You know, the storm is approaching. People are preparing. We're buying food items and doing other things. What should we be doing to protect our homes and structures?
Our homes. We need to look at, you know, you have to make sure assess your home with regards to the safety of your home. All right. We have a situation now where, you know, you have to take specific action early. If you haven't taken action by now, at this time, we have to look at the structure. How do we prepare your roof, your windows, your doors? Okay, that's the three vulnerable areas into your home. When the hurricane comes at your home, the wind force starts with your roof. It goes down around the outside, and then the walls and then the foundation. The impact is there. So they're the three main areas that we have to take into consideration. The roof, now we have to get up there. If you need to be comfortable, if you want some type of comfort, maybe get an architect, an engineer, or some contractor who knows what he's doing to go and assess your home. All right, to make sure that the roof, there's no loose shingles, there's no, any type of trees that could bang into your roof. The windows, they need to be properly sealed. Doors need to be properly sealed. If you want an additional, the wind can come into your doors. If you want additional comfort, maybe get some slab bolts you put at the top and the bottom. You know, at least the carriage bolt. At least
Mr. Pratt,
one
we're going
inch.
to have to stick a pin there for a minute.
Yeah.
We've got to take another break.
Yeah.
But stay with us. We're going to pick up that right after this break. Stay with us. You're watching a special edition of On the Record. We're back right after this. We are into our final segment in this broadcast tonight. Not a lot of time on our hands, Mr. Pratt. Two concerns. One, if air gets into your house in a hurricane, you lose your roof, things start to happen. And also, I want to talk quickly about flooding. What can you do to try and mitigate flooding, particularly in a low-lying area?
Sometimes flooding is difficult, especially with the tidal, what's going on with our tides these days, you know. And if you think about all the saturation that's been going on for the last couple, especially this month, so a lot of water dropped on the island, so it's right there. Therefore, if we have more rain, and we're talking about in some of the northern islands, introducing 6 inches of rain. If you have 1 inch now, you're already flooding. To mitigate against this, most times we have to relocate. Seal your home, lift your furniture as high as you could.
As you could, yeah.
All right. Seal your home if you could. All right. There's some sealants
Like
you could put.
sandbags and the foam.
Sandbags and put it around the doors, etc.
Right, and the foam.
The
Hey,
foam.
you get
Yeah.
foam in the can.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Seal your home, and then now the thing here we have to think about people living close to the water line. Also, people who want to stay in their vessels, that's their homes too. They have to come out of those. Leave, secure them as best you could.
Get out the
and
water.
seek. Get the high.
Final thing before you go, you mentioned air getting into the house. What should you be doing to sort of cover those holes? If you, let's say you've got a broken window or you've got something where air can get in, what should you really get out there and batten up and close those down?
Close up your home, but remember now the air pressure. You don't want your home to have the pressure from the outside. It must have the equal pressure on the inside. So sometimes if you leave something that's open
Somewhere to let some-
against the wind force. If the force coming this way, then open the windows on the
On
opposite
the
side of
other
the home.
side.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that keeps the pressure in the home regulated. You don't want it where, there's a lot of pressure coming from the outside, and then it implodes. we can push it in.
That
All
can
right?
happen as well.
So,
That's
yeah.
equally as dangerous.
Yeah.
Judy, I'm back to you now. What kinds of services are available to members of the public? People think of storm, the hospital must be closed. What kind of services are available?
Certainly.
And special services, because
Right.
there are some people who are taking outpatient care who need specific
Right.
things like dialysis. What's happening with those folks?
I'm so happy you asked that because I really wanted to speak to that. With the dialysis routine that we give, the treatment is given to our patients ahead of time. So at the Princess Margaret Hospital, you will find that the program offers for our patients who have to have treatment. They come in ahead of the storm and they're given that treatment. In Grand Bahama, the Kidney Center takes care of our patients there. Now, of course, when we have patients that are on the ward in our hospitals, then we take care of them in-house, as well as our maternity clients. I wanted to mention those folks. Our babies are very important to us.
And they don't stop.
No. Babies don't hold up for storms at all. And so we have a program where we're very closely engaged with expecting moms, those that we feel may be in some trouble or maybe have some potential risk, then we bring them in so that we can monitor them. We also cancel all elective surgeries during a storm. So the only surgeries essentially we're performing are the emergency procedures, and of course those take priority. Also, I want to mention to our public, because we get a lot of calls on this one, the cancellation of or expiration of visiting hours. When you hear us request our staff to come in, then you can rest assured visiting hours are over. And
Ceased. And the patients are in the hospital's care, so they're okay.
They're fine.
They're fine.
They're fine.
Mr. Pratt, thank you, Judy. Mr. Pratt, I've got to ask you too. Once a storm passes, what are some of the things that you need to look for, the untrained eye, to ensure that your home or your property is still structurally sound, particularly if there's been some flooding or there's been a lot of wind? What kinds of things, what are the triggers that you're looking for to say, hey, I may have a really serious problem here?
Before you get to the house itself, we must consider the authorities. Wait. If you're away from your home, wait before you try and access your property. Wait till there's some clearance. After the waiting time, you go to your home, you want to look at your roof structure, all right? The same entry points, your doors, to see what damage has happened there. If there's any leakage to the roof, we now must consider, did it impact our electrical conduits? We now must see if there's any latent damages that's in some of those sheetrock walls. What's going on in those? There must be some assessment to determine if there's any mold because of the water. Any type of mold.
And that can have long-term effects that you can't even see.
Exactly.
A question, if you are evacuating, whether it's mandatory, you just decide to leave, should you shut off your power?
Yes, absolutely. Secure your gas tanks, shut the power off, and vacate the property. Seek a safe place. If you're in the home, if you stay there after the hurricane, current is off, then again, wait for the authorities. Don't try and do anything. Stay away from damaged lines, because if it's Category 3 or 4, you're going to have trees down, signs down. Everything is going to be down all over the place. So you want to be extremely careful then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Judy, I know there's some emergency numbers
Yes.
and stuff, things you want to share with folks. Just if you're watching this, grab a pen and a piece of paper or pencil, or type it in, I old school, so put it in your phone.
Put it in your phone,
put it in
right,
your phone.
that's
What
it.
numbers, what are the numbers that people need to know, particularly for any emergency that they're having?
Well, first of all, the 911 and 919 telephone numbers are the emergency numbers. And I'm glad you mentioned that, and I want to say this as quickly as I can because I know we're running out of time. But we also have other numbers that we post on our Facebook pages and we share through other means of communications. In New Providence, if you have an emergency or you think you have an emergency, let me put it that way, and you're not sure, you need to speak to a physician and you want to make sure that this is something you might want to come in for, you should call the emergency room or emergency department, that's in A&E, at 322-2861, and you will be connected through to the emergency room. There, of course, are direct numbers, and we post those on Facebook. We share those in many different ways. And the same is for the Sandlands Rehabilitation Center and Grand Bahama Health Services. But back to 911 and 919, and I really need to say this because I don't think our EMS staff will let me get by for not saying. You know a few of them, right?
I know.
Okay, so what I do want to ask members of our public to do is to consider that there are particular distinctions that determine whether or not your case may be an emergency. And we're really asking that you seek to see what they are. There are things like asthma, severe pain, severe chest pain, severe bleeding, lacerations, thoughts of suicide. These are things that are considered and classified as emergencies. And you can find those on our Facebook pages and other ways that we communicate. We'll be happy to tell you if you even call us at the communications department at PHA. Those non-emergencies may be a sprain. It may be just a small cut, something that's not really bleeding. But if you're not sure, and I say this because I'm no doctor, so
Sure.
here's the disclaimer. If you have a particular medical condition and you're not sure, what you need to do is look us up and call in, and a physician in the emergency room will speak to you, and that he or she will guide you as to whether or not you should be seen as an emergency. Also, remember, get your prescriptions filled. You want to have 2 weeks supply. You want to ensure that you're ready no matter what. So we really encourage that. Work with us.
Good,
We're
useful
working
information.
with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Certainly, we'll be talking to you folks. Thank you very much for coming tonight. That's going to bring us to the end of the broadcast. I do want to say a special thanks to all of our guests tonight for coming on and sharing valuable information. Be sure and stay tuned to this channel throughout this weekend. Over the next few days, we're going to be providing you with updates and information. It's very important, folks, that you pay attention to all forecasts. Do not listen to rumors. Do not listen to innuendos. No guesswork. Listen to the official forecast. Don't let people send you foolishness on WhatsApp. Don't believe everything you read on Facebook. Listen to the official information. Be sure that you have all of your emergency numbers, and folks, have a plan. Whether you think you're in the hurricane cone or not, whether you think that you're at risk or not, have a plan and prepare. Once again, I want to thank all my guests for coming out tonight. Thank you so much. We do appreciate you being here. Stay tuned to this network. We will be with you throughout this entire ordeal as we track Dorian. Good night, everyone.